All right, howdy ho, everybody. We're getting ready. We're firing things up right now. You can tell I'm starting Revit. We're kicking off project number 3. This is our Revit house. And as soon as Revit is done launching, I'll go ahead and get started. Some of you guys might want to some of you may want to watch the video and make copious notes so that you can refer to those notes on a second time watching the video, or you just want to try and follow along as best you can. However you guys want to work, that's totally cool. Okay, so we've started up Revit. I'm going to come over here and select my architectural template. And the first thing that we have is the big giant blank screen. In other words, we have the universe available to be monkeyed with to our heart's content. Well, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create some plan grids. We don't have any structural elements. Normally, floor plan grids or a grid on a floor plan is used to indicate where in the plan structural steel framing is being used. In this case, we're using them as reference go-bys for major portions of our house to be drawn at. So I'm on my architecture tab. I'm going to come here to the right-hand side under the datum panel right here. I'm going to come up and I'm going to click grid. Now the grid bubble, the bubble that indicates what the letter or the grid identification mark is always on the side of the second click for the grid. So what I'm going to do is I want all my grid bubbles to line up on the right hand side of the plan over here. So I'm going to draw my grids from left to right. And I'm just going to start somewhere just sort of random. Left click and then drag my mouse across. And if you zoom in, that's grid number 1. Now, according to the handout, and like I said, I'll get this handout posted so you guys can see what's going on. The horizontal grids are usually done with letters. So this grid number 1 is not going to be grid number 1. It's actually going to be grid A. And that's supposed to be a capital A. There we go. And then I can come, and it doesn't matter how far apart I'm actually drawing these, because I'll fine-tune that placement here in a moment. But as you can see, I zoom in, the second grid that I place is grid B. Revit is again trying to be helpful, and it's saying, well, the last thing that you used was a letter, so I'm going to increment that value based on the last one given. All right, so there we go. There's grids A through F. Excuse me. Now I want to create grids. Excuse me. Man, nasty frog in my throat. I'm going to create grids 1 through 6. And these are going to be vertical grids. So I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up so that grid number or that grid bubble is up at the top. Now if I zoom in, you see this is grid G. I don't want this to be grid G. I want it to be grid 1. So I can select the G, type 1, push return, zoom back out. Now, if you notice when I'm placing these grids, you see that alignment guide down at the bottom? That alignment guide is going to lock all the endpoints of my grids together so that they're all the same length. So I can left click down here at the bottom and then come up where that next alignment grid is and click. So I'm going to do this until I have grids 1 through 6. And 6. There we go. Those are our grids. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that these grids are all the right distances apart from each other as shown on the handout. And just a reminder, I will have this handout posted. So the distance between grid 1 and grid 2 is supposed to be 19 feet. So I'm going to highlight grid number 1. And you see this temporary dimension? This temporary dimension is reporting to me the distance between grid number 1 and grid number 2. Because I have grid number 1 highlighted, if I change this dimension, grid number 1 is going to move. That's exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to say 19 feet. And even though these don't intersect right now, we'll come back and we'll fix this afterwards, so don't anyone panic. The distance between grid 2 and grid 3 needs to change. Now I want the relationship between grid 1 and grid 2 to remain the same. So I will select grid number 3 and I will change this dimension. This dimension should be 16 foot 2. Now, if you notice here, I'm not actually using the feet and inches designation. Revit will automatically sort of imply that if I just use a space. So 16 space 2, push return, and you can see Revit will change that into 16 feet 2 inches automatically. Okay, the distance between grid 3 and grid 4 is 8 feet. So I highlight grid 4 because that's the one I want to move. I come down here to this temporary dimension and I'll click in here and I'll say 8 feet. Okay. On to grid number 5, I'll highlight grid number 5 because that's the one I want to move. The distance I want here is 10 foot 2, so I'll change 17.4 to 10. And then grid number 6, I move, and it's supposed to be 13 foot 5. So there we go. Grid numbers 1 through 6 are now spaced correctly compared to one another. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of them, and I just want to move them over here. So I'm going to use my move tool and just left click somewhere and just drag him over in this direction just so that he's centered on the grids. Not really a big deal. It's just I want them a little spaced differently. All right, we're going to go through the same process on these grids over here on the side. So I want to move grid B. I'm going to highlight grid B because that's the one I want to move. Now this dimension, this helper, or this temporary dimension between grid B and grid A, I'm going to move. So I highlight the dimension and I type 5 feet, or just 5. Grid C, I'll highlight C. Change the dimension between B and C to 3 feet. Highlight D. This is supposed to be 15 foot 4. 5 space 4, press return. Grid E. The distance between D and E is supposed to be 5 foot 6. So I'll highlight the dimension, 5 foot 6, press return. And grid F is not supposed to be 24 foot 8. It's going to be something different on yours, and that's fine. I want it to be 4 foot 9.5. So I'll type in 4 space 9 space 1/2. Revit will automatically have this figured out. And I'm going to do the same thing with these grids that I did with the other ones. I just want them more or less centered. So I'm going to highlight this, highlight all of these grids, and you notice that I'm using the same click and drag that we were able to use in AutoCAD. Left, or drag to the left, and it's a crossing window. But if I go to the right, it's a selection window. The objects have to be completely inside, so I would have to make a selection window like this. Or if I move to the left, it's just grab the grid heads and move them that way. Use my move command, and since this is more or less the center of the house, I can move them down. You know, that's not all that bad. Just so they're in line if I'm drawing an imaginary line through here. There we go. Now I know my house really doesn't go past the boundaries of these outside grid lines, so I want to change those. I'm going to pull these vertical grid lines in closer to the house. So if I select one, now you'll notice that I've got this little thing here that says 3D. I've got an open circle, which represents the three-dimensional end of this object, and then I've got this lock icon, and this lock icon goes all the way across and aligns these. That means all of these grids are locked, and if I edit one, then I can edit them all. I come down here and I'm coming to this open circle, left click, and I'm just dragging. That's all I'm doing. Now zoom out a little bit. And the grids for my plan are more or less centered here between my elevation indicators. Now I could move my elevation indicators so that they are working with the plan. I'm just not going in that direction. I'm not going in that order. All right, that is setting up our grids. The next thing that we have to do is we have to set up our levels. And for that, there we go, I'll need to go to an elevation view. So I'm going to go to my south elevation view, which happens to be this elevation indicator right there. So double click on, and you can see here are those grids that we placed in plan just a minute ago. So these are three-dimensional objects. The only reason that we can't see grids A through G is because we're looking at them on the side. We can't see those. Now these levels kind of have that same little dot We want that indicate how far out into the universe that they reach. So I just want to pull these in a hair, so they're not that quite far away. I'm going to have to zoom in a little so I can actually see that point. Pull him in. There we go. Now we're going to place some additional levels. We're going to rename some things. We're going to start with level 1. I'm going to select level 1, and I'm going to rename this ground floor. Now, when I push return, we're going to get this message. Would you like to rename corresponding views? This level 1 is the same name that we have right over here. So when I click yes, my level 1 floor plan and my level 1 ceiling plan are going to automatically be renamed to match this designation here. I'm going to do the same with level 2. This becomes second floor. Yes, I want to rename. And you can see now I've got a ground floor and a second floor over here. Now, one of the things that we need to change here is my second floor is not 10 feet above my ground floor, it's 9 feet. So if I left click on that dimension, so here we go, I'm going to select my level, click on the dimension, and I can just enter 9. Boom, there we go, 9 feet. Now I need to copy my second floor. I need to make some additional levels. We'll use these as reference points all throughout the construction of this particular project. So I'm going to highlight my second floor. I'm going to come to my copy command, and 8 feet. So let me back that up again. Back that up so that you guys can see what else is going on. See how I did that. Highlight my object, come to my copy command. Now I'm just clicking somewhere out in space, and I'm moving my mouse in the direction that I want to go. And instead of trying to move my mouse so it's precisely at 8 feet, which may or may not be exactly perfectly even and straight, I can just type in 8 and push return. There we go. Except this is not level 3. This is going to be low roof. I'm now going to copy that low roof up 2 feet. It becomes the high roof. I'm then going to copy the high roof up 5 feet, and it becomes the chimney. Now you can see these grids stop at the low roof, or just above the low roof. I want these to go up a little bit higher, so I'm going to select these grids, and I'm going to pull them up so that they're above the chimney just a little bit. Now that adjusted the height of grids 1 through 6. I want to adjust the height of the other grids. So that means I need to use either the east or the west elevation. It really doesn't matter which one. I'll double click and open the west. You can see here are those levels that we just created. You can also see how much further out they are from the plan. So I'm going to select a grid, and I'm going to move these grid bubbles up just like we did in the other elevation view. And I'm going to select a level. Now again, I'm zooming in so that I can get that little open circle. That's what I'm aiming for when I do this. So I'm going to click that little open circle, and I'm going to pull this in this way. Come back over here. There we go. There's the other end. Left click, drag him over. There we go. Double click my scroll wheel, and that's my zoom extents. Now we have some readability issues here. Well, for starters, this elevation is at an 1/8 inch. I want all my elevations to be at a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to highlight this view in my project browser. I'm going to hold my shift key, and I'm going to click on the top elevation view. And this is a Windows trick. This is not a Revit thing. Holding down the shift key will grab everything in between your previous click and your current click. So I've selected all 4 of these views, as you can tell right over here. It says 4 views. My building elevation. I want my detail level to be medium. And then I want my view scale to be a 1/4 inch. And then I'll come down to the bottom and I'll click apply. Now you can see everything here shrunk. And if I go back to my north elevation, well, go to my south elevation. Going back to my south elevation, this is going to the north elevation for the first time. You can see everything here shrunk. I'm set at a 1/4 inch, and my detail level is set to medium. I'm going to do the same thing for my ground floor. I'm going to hold down my control key. I'll click on my second floor. I can come back and say my view scale is supposed to be at 1/4 inch and my detail level is supposed to be medium. I'll now click apply. Doesn't look like anything changed because I don't have those views open. I will double click on the ground floor. There we go. There's my ground floor. Okay, that's got my column grids and my levels set and saved. I'm going to come up, I'm going to click save. And I'm going to navigate to where my project files are. In this case, I've got them on my OneDrive. There we go. And these are the files I'm using for my videos. And there's Revit. And here we go. This is project 3. There we go. So there's step 1. We have our levels and grids set up and ready to go. The next step, we're going to be placing some walls, and we're going to be making some custom walls. So we'll see you guys in a second.